Today we're looking at arguably the greatest feud in Dragon Gate history, the two-decade rivalry between Shingo Takagi and Masaaki Mochizuki, perhaps culminating with their January 10, 2024 match at Tokyo Korakuen Hall. It's a truly urgent, energetic, hard-hitting, no-nonsense program where they bring the violence from start to finish, going all out until they finally manage to incapacitate one another. It's not the quintessentially flashy and spectacular Dragon Gate Pro Lucha style by any means, as while it's certainly fast-paced, and there are a few dives from Mochizuki, it's much more of an intense, aggressive striking war where they incorporate bombs when it makes sense. Their matches aren't necessarily realistic in terms of the offense they utilize, but they maintain enough pro wrestling realism to be highly compelling contests where we actually believe victory is important through their ability to convey the pressing need to maintain the advantage because both are so dangerous, mighty, and unyielding. Mochizuki's work in this program has been no less than astounding, carrying the green young Takagi in the early days and managing to stay fit and relevant enough to still deliver the best match in the program, if not his entire career, at 45 years old. Even in the most recent match that took place a week before his 54th birthday, he was miraculously still able to maintain the minimal, very good level of the series. Meanwhile, Takagi has grown in this series from a great rookie to one of the best workers in all of wrestling, and while Mochizuki carried their earlier matches, Takagi's input and contributions have increased dramatically throughout the 2 decades, and more recently he's been the driving force. The series is notable for the escalating back-and-forth slugging, with Takagi pushing the pace and utilizing his physical, go-for-broke, aggressive brute force striking, while the quicker, leaner, more technically skilled former karateka Mochizuki tries to utilize his speed, dexterity, guile, and educated feet to slow the raging dragon down. The primary motif of their encounters is that Mochizuki's principal mode of defense against Takagi's pumping bombers and chops is to intercept the crushing blow with a kick, only ducking and dodging if he must. A far more secondary motif is Takagi attacking Mochizuki's knee, but while Mochizuki will happily ground Takagi and try to follow with submissions, Takagi isn't really interested in defeating Mochizuki through any kind of knee work. He just wants to temporarily immobilize him so he can once again plow him over or scoop him up for a deadly bomb. These two have literally been going at it since the beginning of Shingo's great career. He debuted on October 3, 2004, with the first of his 10 matches against Mochizuki taking place on November 28, 2004. Takagi was much skinnier in their 2004 encounter, and at 5 foot 10 inches, without the thicker body type he sports during his current New Japan tenure, the bigger promotions in Japan at the time weren't interested in him, so he ended up being the first graduate of the Dragon Gate dojo, despite growing up idolizing Genichiro Tenryu and Atsushi Onita, and not really doing the pro lucha style Dragon Gate was trying to establish as their brand. He was certainly a very high quality rookie though, and Mochizuki did a reasonably competitive match with him that was quite impressive for what it was, before defeating him at 12:54. This is not surprisingly the least of their matches, but it's still worthwhile, and already showed that their styles blend well. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be footage of their second match from January 16, 2005. It was a 7-minute 13-second no contest, which, especially given how this program has generally gone for him, seems an impressive result for young Takagi. By their third match on September 18, 2005, Shingo had bulked up considerably and was looking a lot more like the wrestler we are used to. This was Takagi's first Open the Dream Gate title challenge, having won a 4-way match over BB Hulk, Genki Horiguchi, and Susumu Yokozuka the previous night. These two already had good chemistry and a nice dynamic. Shingo still wasn't great here, but he became a credible challenger through his knee attack. Really the only time in this series where he strategically looked for an edge to control the action, as by the later matches he was largely relying upon his physical presence. This tactic directly correlated to it being by far the slowest version of Takagi we witnessed in the series, but that was still fine because Mochizuki is more than capable of delivering the more exciting and spectacular action. Mochizuki won the striking and running battles before ultimately knocking Shingo out with a high kick at 20:32. I have this at 3.5 stars. Their fourth match on October 12, 2007 at Korakuen Hall, which Takagi finally won with his last falconry, is the match where you really have to take notice of both the high quality of the contest, as well as the tremendous growth of Shingo in both skill and ranking. It's a great example of an all-out aggressive Katsuyori Shibata-style striking war, well before Shibata made the style famous with his 2012 return to New Japan. It's just got a great urgent drive, exchanging bombs back and forth at a very frantic pace, topping each other with impact. This feels like the best of their early matches, and probably the second best match in the series, but unfortunately, it's clipped to 6 minutes and 31 seconds from 14 minutes and 20 seconds, so we'll never truly know. I'd rate this 4.25 star range. Their fifth match on January 17, 2010 was contested for the FIP World Heavyweight title, which Masaaki Mochizuki had captured from Davey Richards on December 6, 2009. Shingo was into his peak years now, and was a real chore for Mochizuki to handle, with notable advantages in size, strength, and power. Takagi brought an incredibly aggressive style, battering Mochizuki with his hard-hitting power game, but this is where Mochizuki really began implementing the strategy of working the arm to slow Shingo down after injuring his arm on the ring apron. While Takagi kept mauling Mochizuki, his arm was too compromised to just steamroll him. Mochizuki beautifully showcased his karateka background, having nice runs mixing several of his impressive athletic kicks in. However, his plan was clear, and by continuing to go back to the arm, targeting its kicks as many times as he could, in addition to utilizing his underused submission skills, he was ultimately able to take out the weakened appendage with an udegatame submission. At 13:03, this was a little on the short side, but was nonetheless an energetic match with both near the top of their game. I give it 3.5 stars. Their sixth encounter on May 12, 2011 was a first-round match in the 2011 King of Gate tournament. It was a better version of their previous match, and the best of their complete matches thus far, with Takagi bringing his energetic burst to deliver a strong overall performance. Mochizuki was once again destroying his arm, and just had an answer for virtually everything Takagi tried. Takagi did his best to fight through the pain and level Mochizuki with big strikes, but Mochizuki just intercepted Shingo's punches and pumping bombers with his kicks. Takagi had more power, but time and time again, the senior wrestler Mochizuki was a step or two ahead. They pulled out all the stops, but the Rocky II finished at 18:18, where Mochizuki beat the 10 count, but Takagi collapsed trying was a bit much. I give this match 4 stars. They faced off in the first round of the King of Chop 2012 tournament on April 19th, but this is just power slap to the chest, and was only notable for Takagi's continued woes in the series. He was the only one who managed a knockdown, but Mochizuki once again prevailed because Takagi's hands were ruled to be together on his double chop. Their actual 2012 wrestling match took place on September 14th, with Takagi getting a much-needed victory at 15:02, though only by countout. This match felt like a step in the wrong direction, because Mochizuki had won the previous two by attacking the arm, and while I'm glad they didn't keep repeating themselves, it nonetheless made no sense for Mochizuki to fight an ever-improving opponent with no strategy at all when he had only won their previous 2 encounters due to implementing a solid game plan. Today, Mochizuki just threw a bunch of random kicks, and was largely run over by his energetic opponent, who just kept blasting him with lariats and chops until Mochizuki was no longer able to resist his power moves. They once again ended with a variation of the Rocky II finish, this time with a lengthy double cell on the floor, after Shingo Death Valley bombing Mochizuki on the canvas actually resulted in a countout. While they boned for Takagi, who had lost 5 of their first 6 matches, it wasn't one that felt particularly satisfying. It would have been a useful stepping stone to justify a prompt rematch, but since they didn't fight again for 3 years, this just added to the overall feeling of the match being a little beneath their high standards. Though their energy level and quality of work was higher than some of their earlier matches, it was mostly just them being skilled tough men. I give this 3.25 stars. Their Undisputed Classic came on November 1st, 2015 at Edion Arena, Osaka. They truly pulled out all the stops to elevate their usual high-level contest into a really crazy, all-out match of the year candidate. It was kind of their greatest hits, but they took the best aspects of everything they'd done before and finally figured out how to combine them into a classic big match. It was close to twice the length of their usual match, yet still worked faster and more aggressively than most of what they'd done before, with extra brutality, but also tons of bombs and more dives. This was during the period where Shingo was trying to rid Dragon Gate of the old codgers, and it was more toward his signature pace and style than their previous encounters. Mochizuki was still wrestling like a man 2 decades younger in all the best possible ways. He was also back to utilizing strategy after just trying to brute force the bigger, stronger bully in their previous encounter, once again intercepting as many of Takagi's strikes with kicks to the arm as he could to keep Shingo from gaining momentum. Takagi had more answers, as well as more willpower this time though, and was just so strong that he was often overwhelming Mochizuki even though Mochizuki was fighting smartly. It had been those brains that had carried Mochizuki through this rivalry, but tonight, simply being the more experienced fighter with the higher fight IQ wasn't enough. He had to keep digging deeper, pulling out flying moves we hadn't seen from him in this program, such as the Quebrada and Swan Dive Missile Kick, but Takagi's new moves were much more imposing and damaging, particularly his Stay Dream and Avalanche-style Death Valley Bomb. Early on, Takagi hit the Death Valley Bomb onto the ring apron, the finish of their previous match, and while this time it was more of a control spot to set up working over Mochizuki's knees, a storyline that was unfortunately dropped along the way, it set him up for being the one who was generally ahead in the match, even though there was arguably more exchanging big spots than there should have been. They did everything they could possibly think of, with a lot more big spots from Takagi, a lot more athleticism from Mochizuki, and tons of huge impact offense from both. Takagi had 2 runs with the Open the Dream Gate title by this point, but in winning this match decisively with his last falconry, this was the first time it felt like he had finally managed to surpass the master that had owned him for the first 11 years of his career. I give this match 4.5 stars, though even that could be low. Given their 9th meeting on May 9th, 2017, was a 13-minute 11-second King of Gate League match at Korakuen Hall, rather than a 25-minute pay-per-view match at Edion Arena Osaka. This was a great follow-up to the best match of the series on November 1st, 2015. It started off very fast, but as soon as Takagi had an answer to Mochizuki's flying, Mochizuki proactively shifted to the arm work to slow him down. Takagi answered with knee work, wrapping Mochizuki's legs around the post and cracking him with the chair. This was an energetic sprint though, where Takagi did his best to get them away from strategic wrestling and into bombing away. Mochizuki still tried to intercept Takagi's pumping bombers with kicks, but whenever Mochizuki tried to leave the striking battles, Takagi tried to cut him right off to keep him in his realm, often succeeding, so overall, they were mainly bruising and blistering one another. Everything Takagi did was really hard-hitting, whether it was close-range exchanges or full momentum charging attacks. The Brute was clearly overpowering Mochizuki here, even though it was a lot of trading blows. This was a match Mochizuki should have lost, but he saw the sliding bomber coming and turned it into a crucifix for the flash pin. It was lucky, but one of the main points throughout the series is that the bully Takagi lives and dies by his aggression, while Mochizuki is a smart and crafty hero. Today, Mochizuki wasn't able to win the head-to-head battles, but still managed to find a way to steal the match. While this wasn't as amazing as their 2015 match, it was still a hell of a war that didn't show any deterioration in their performances or the matchup. I give it 4 stars. At 21 minutes 21 seconds, the latest Takagi vs Mochizuki match from January 10, 2024, is the second longest of their 10 singles matches. On the bright side, it's miraculously almost as good in quality, crispness, and execution as their previous matches. The main difference is it's the only one that feels overlong, as all their previous encounters had little to no dead time, but this one finally felt more like the contemporary dragged-out match. It's possible this was necessary, since Mochizuki isn't as useful as he once was, but he still managed some impressive athletic feats, such as a standing moonsault off the apron. Though these two know each other like the back of their hand by now, this match had by far the most feeling out of the series, as they really eased into things. Mochizuki wound up working the arm again, but this time not necessarily on purpose, as he ducked the pumping bomber on the outside, resulting in Shingo's arm crashing the post. Mochizuki appeared to be baiting Takagi into the chop exchange Takagi always desires, but countered into a wakigatame. Shingo didn't so much attack the knee as have a few answers for the kicks he knows Mochizuki is featuring, such as the dragon screw. As the match developed, it continued the trend of their last few matches, where the older Mochizuki is generally hanging in there, but nonetheless fighting from behind. They redid the finish of their 2017 match, where Mochizuki counters the sliding bomber into a crucifix, but this time Shingo narrowly escaped. Mochizuki kicked out of 2 pumping bombers, but eventually fell prey to the Thunderfire powerbomb. This would certainly have been better at no more than 15 minutes, but it's still a very recommendable 3.5-star match. If it winds up being the final chapter in their great series, it's a hell of a lot better closing than most wrestlers have been able to write.